Welcome back to A Crud with a Book, where we look at the full breakdown of Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. Tuberculosis. It sounds like a disease from another century. Something cured. Something historical. Something solved. But according to John Green in Everything is Tuberculosis, TB isn't just alive. It's one of the deadliest infectious diseases on Earth today. This book is not just about bacteria. It's about inequality, infrastructure, power, and the invisible systems that decide who lives and who doesn't. Today on Crud, we're breaking down this book in detail, what it argues, how it reframes global health, and why tuberculosis is not a medical failure, but a moral one. Part 1. What tuberculosis actually is. Green begins with the science. Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, a bacterium that primarily attacks the lungs but can spread to other parts of the body. It spreads through the air, microscopic droplets released when someone coughs or even speaks. Here's the critical distinction the book explains clearly. Latent TB, the bacteria are present but inactive. No symptoms, not contagious. Active TB, the bacteria multiply, symptoms appear, persistent cough, weight loss, fever, and the disease becomes transmissible. An estimated 1/4 of the global population carries latent TB. Most will never develop active disease. But when immune systems weaken through malnutrition, HIV, stress, or poor living conditions, TB becomes active. And this is where the book pivots. Tuberculosis is not simply about infection. It is about vulnerability. Part 2. TB as a disease of inequality. One of Green's central arguments is this: tuberculosis is curable. We have had effective treatments for decades, yet it still kills over 1 million people every year. Why? Because TB thrives where poverty thrives. The book carefully traces how tuberculosis disproportionately affects people in overcrowded housing communities with limited healthcare access, populations with malnutrition, prison systems, refugee camps. Green makes a crucial point. In wealthier countries, TB declined not primarily because of antibiotics, but because of improved housing, sanitation, nutrition, and public health infrastructure. In other words, TB isn't just a pathogen. It's a mirror reflecting structural inequality. Part 3. The historical arc. The book dives into history, and this is where it becomes especially compelling. In the 19th century, tuberculosis, then called consumption, was romanticized. It was associated with artists, poets, and intellectuals. It was deadly but culturally aestheticized. Then came the discovery of the bacterium in 1882. Suddenly, TB was no longer poetic. It was microbial. But even after antibiotics were developed in the mid-20th century, TB never disappeared globally. It retreated in high-income nations while remaining entrenched in low-income ones. Green argues that this divergence reveals something uncomfortable. Global health priorities often follow wealth, not need. Part 4. Drug resistance and modern failure. One of the most urgent sections of the book focuses on drug-resistant TB. When patients do not complete treatment, often because they cannot afford time off work, transportation to clinics, or stable access to medication, the bacteria evolve. Multi-drug resistant TB is more expensive, more difficult, and far longer to treat. Green emphasizes that this is not a failure of patients. It is a failure of systems. If someone must choose between feeding their family and completing a 6-month treatment course, the decision isn't medical. It's economic. The bacteria exploit instability. Part 5. The philosophy of Everything is Tuberculosis. The title is metaphorical. Green isn't saying everything literally is TB. He's arguing that tuberculosis reveals how interconnected everything is. Housing policy, global trade, patent law, immigration systems, public health, funding, pharmaceutical economics. When a preventable disease continues killing millions, it tells us something about global priorities. TB becomes a diagnostic tool not just of lungs but of societies. It exposes the cost of indifference. Part 6. The economics of cure. The book also critiques pharmaceutical structures. Developing drugs for diseases that primarily affect low-income populations is less profitable. That reality shapes research pipelines. Green explores how funding gaps, patent protections, and uneven investment patterns influence who gets innovation and who waits. The tragedy is this: we know how to treat TB. We simply fail to distribute that knowledge and access equitably. And that gap is political, not biological. Part 7. Why this book matters now. In a post-pandemic world, we've learned how quickly airborne disease can disrupt civilization. But while COVID commanded immediate global coordination, tuberculosis, which kills quietly and persistently, continues with far less urgency. Green forces readers to confront a disturbing question. Why does slow, predictable suffering generate less action than sudden crisis? The answer, he suggests, lies in visibility, narrative, and power. Conclusion: Everything is Tuberculosis is not simply a book about infectious disease. It's a book about infrastructure, about neglect, about the moral architecture of global systems. Tuberculosis survives not because it is unstoppable, but because inequality is persistent. And if we want to eliminate TB, the solution isn't just antibiotics. It's justice. Call TO action if you found this breakdown valuable. Comment below. Do you think global health is primarily a scientific challenge or a political one? And if you want more deep dives like this, subscribe to CRUD, where we unpack big ideas without oversimplifying them.